Vidura had spoken very strongly to Dhritarashtra, and it had awakened him to the higher purpose of life. So Dhritarashtra left home along with Vidura, because Vidura had come to instruct him that, you're going to leave the body soon, you're old, death is imminent, you have to do something about it. And Dhritarashtra took the instructions seriously, and he left home. And when he left the home, he was followed by his chaste wife, Gandhari. And of course, Dhritarashtra gave up his body in the forest, and Gandhari also departed with her husband. So his departure, despite his failings in the rest of his life, his attachment to his family, and his concern for his sons, so many things, his enmity towards the Kurus, his not taking proper care of the Pandavas who were his relatives. So he'd been neglectful in many ways, but then somehow by the grace of a devotee, Vidura, he had done something good. Didn't go back to Godhead, but he did get a lot better situation. He was able to achieve to the impersonal Brahman. So that was something a lot better than what would have happened if he just stayed at home. We have to understand the importance of spiritual life. And sometimes you have to do things which other people may not always appreciate. So Prabhupada writes in the purport how it is astonishing that great souls would cheat. You know, one of the defects of conditioned souls is the propensity to cheat or to be cheated. And we will say cheating and to be cheated, it's not good, this is conditioning. But here, it's something very special, a very special kind of cheating, because cheating is done in pursuit of understanding the absolute truth, to try to do something for the benefit of our spiritual progress. And sometimes you have to do these things which are not always appreciated. Srila Prabhupada wrote in one purport, it was in relation to Dhruva Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada said that he had been cursed by the parents of so many of his disciples. Because Srila Prabhupada had taken so many young people away from their home to join him and to take up the practice of Krishna consciousness. And so the parents would not be favorable, would not agree, that I don't want my son, I don't want my daughter, I don't want them doing this, They didn't appreciate. And Srila Prabhupada knew that many of the followers who had come to the Krishna consciousness movement, that they were leaving their family. And their family members were not happy about it. They would rather they stay at home and drink and eat meat and take drugs and do all kinds of sinful activities rather than join the Hare Krishna movement. They thought, chanting Hare Krishna is not a good thing, not a worthwhile thing. But Srila Prabhupada understood that he did this for a higher purpose. That the devotees came and joined Srila Prabhupada. I personally joined the Krishna consciousness movement. I was 21. I just graduated from university, and I was working in a job. I only worked a few months. And then I joined the Krishna consciousness movement. You know, I was coming, I was looking for a spiritual teacher. It was very much in vogue. It was very much the thing to do, to have a spiritual master, to have a guide. And there were many different spiritual teachers on the market. And so I was looking at different people and reading many books. And somehow one day I happened to purchase a Krishna book. Just from a bookstore. I never met a devotee. I'd seen a devotee one time. I'd seen a devotee who was dancing barefoot in the streets of London, dressed in robes. I thought, oh my goodness, shocking, you know. And I certainly didn't speak to him. Anyway, later on, somehow I bought this book, Krishna. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a beautiful book, very attractive, full of colored pictures. And I took it home and showed it to my friend. And somehow by the grace of Krishna, my friend said, I've also got a book by the same person. And this was in 1970 or late 1970, early 1971. And there were very few books. It wasn't like, you know, nowadays the books are everywhere and you can easily get books. But in 1971, you know, very few books published. That Krishna book had only just been published. But somehow my friend had another book. He had a little book called The Topmost Yoga System. Anyway, he gave it to me, and I read it. And when I read it, I thought, this is amazing. I thought, this is something I can understand. You know, I read other people's books, and I could never understand what they were writing about, talking about. It was something to just beyond me. But when I read Srila Prabhupada's writings, his message was very clear. And sounded also very easy and practical, things I could do. So it led to me going to the devotees. They used to make incense. In the early days, you know, those years, we didn't have a congregation. We didn't have people with jobs supporting us. We supported, the devotees supported themselves simply by distributing literature. Every day the devotees would go out in the streets and chant Hare Krishna and trying to distribute literature. And in this, somehow we were maintaining the center. So it was a miracle really that somehow we could maintain the center in those days. Anyway, we were maintaining the center, and I was coming there every day. I had a job and I was working, and I came there. And I enjoyed the evening arti. Every day we come and chant and dance there ecstatically. The whole building, it was an old building, the whole building would vibrate. And this was a problem, the neighbors, you know, because their house would also vibrate. So they were always complaining, and they were always trying to close us down. But it took them many years, and somehow we were able to maintain for some years until we were able to eventually find another place and relocate. That place was on rent. And so I was coming there in the evening, and I would attend the programs, and they would give a little class on the Bhagavad Gita. Now, I've been trying to read the Bhagavad Gita, and we even had a course. When I was studying at the uni, they had a course on the Bhagavad Gita, and it was taught by a a minister from the Christian tradition. Somehow he was teaching the Bhagavad Gita. I didn't really understand anything he said. But when I went to the temple and I heard the devotees speak from the Bhagavad Gita, I liked what they were saying. Their message was very clear. And I used to come every evening. So then one day the devotees said to me, they said, why don't you stay overnight? I said, I have a job. They said, you can go to work in the morning. You can come for the Mongol Arti, and after the program, you can go to work. I thought, oh, okay, that's nice, because I was coming every evening. So I started to stay in the temple and go to work. And then after some time, they said to me, give up that job. And so I thought, yeah, why not? Give up jobs, there's so many jobs. People get so attached to their little jobs. You can always find a new job. And often you get a job, sometimes you're made redundant, the company may move. Nandi Kishore's wife was working in a good job, then the company moved to Pakistan, and she had to find a new job. You go find, but she found one, you always can get jobs. So, no, I wasn't worried. I got my degree, I just come out of uni, and I wanted to learn more. I wanted to try to be a vegetarian. And so I moved in the temple and I became full-time devotee. So that's how I came to Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada came. The devotee who was doing, there was one lady, she was a French lady, she was doing the puja. And we were practically the only temple in ISKCON that had big deities. Radha Randanishwara. Los Angeles had small deities, and they didn't have big marble. London was the first temple in the Krishna conscious movement to actually have big Radha Krishna deities. Prabhupada had personally taken them from some people there in London. And so we were very fortunate. And there's no pujaris, there was only this one lady, a French lady, and she was the only one who was second initiated. And so she was doing all the puja herself. And she was always saying, Prabhupada's coming. We would always hear this, Prabhupada's going to come, he's coming soon, And so we're always, when is he coming? He's coming soon. He was supposed to come, and he's come. When's he coming? He's coming soon. He said he's coming. And so after I joined, like in about February, I think Prabhupada finally came in the month of June, and we had Rati Atra. And Prabhupada always liked to come for Rati Atras. Nowadays we have a lot of Rati Atras. Oh my goodness. Malaysia, for example, they have more than 30 Rati Atras in the yatra every year. Anyway, when we had Rati Atra in London, Prabhupada said he would come, and he did come. And we all went to the airport to greet Prabhupada. It was middle of the night. We were all there in the airport, and all of a sudden Prabhupada appears in our midst, and we all fall to the ground, It's amazing seeing Prabhupada. Prabhupada, very transcendental. He just come off a flight all the way from USA, but he's not jet lagged or anything, and he sees all of us and he greets us, and then he says, let's go back to temple. So we all went back to the center, and Prabhupada brought everyone into his little room. We were renting a property there. We had this room for Prabhupada. What happened, before Prabhupada came, one devotee had come from the US, and he saw Prabhupada's room, and he said, oh, this room, this is not good enough for Prabhupada. He said, and we're so limited for accommodation. There were so many devotees joining. The temple was filling up. And he said, Prabhupada, he said, this room is not big enough for Prabhupada. It's not really very nice. And he wrote to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, he said, when you come to London next time, we want to get you a suite in the hotel. But Prabhupada wrote back and said, I don't want to stay in hotel. I like to stay in that room. So we were very happy to hear that, that Prabhupada wanted to stay with us in the temple, even though we didn't have a lot of space. Similarly, in Calcutta, also I remember staying in Calcutta temple. I come to India, it must have been 1975. You were not born, huh? You were in another body. See, I was already there in India in 75. Prabhupada came there in Calcutta, Albert Road. Now the Albert Road Center, they've done a lot of improvements. Of course, it's not really, it's an old building. So when we were living there, we had very limited facilities. It was very basic. The devotees had rented that property. Now we own it, but in the 70s we were still renting. And we had limited facility. There was often no electricity. Often there's no water also. And there was only the one toilet. And Prabhupada's coming. And so, we gave the toilet for Prabhupada. And we would all go out across the road to the Pakur. Pakur? The lake across the road from the temple. And we would bathe in the lake every morning. And so like that we were living. The beginning of our movement was, there was some austerity, but it was always blissful. We were always joyful just to be with Srila Prabhupada. We did not mind a little difficulty. Another time in Mayapur festival, Gaur Purnima festival, in that Prabhupada's time we had initially only the Lotus building. The Lotus building, it's just 3 floors, 2 floors. And so temple was below, and upstairs was Prabhupada's room, and then there was another floor. And so devotees were coming from USA. In those days we had many young devotees coming, and they liked to come for the festival, Gaur Purnima festival. So Srila Prabhupada would also come. That's why they all came. We wanted to be with Srila Prabhupada. Right? One moment's association with the pure devotee can give you perfection. So we were all happy to get that moment's association with Srila Prabhupada and to be with him. So Prabhupada would give a talk. He'd welcome all the devotees to Mayapur, and then he would tell them, don't mind the difficulties. We were all sleeping on the verandas around the building. The next year, they constructed some rooms along the wall. There was a boundary wall along the front of Mayapur, and they constructed some rooms leaning against the wall. And so that year, first of all, we were sleeping on the veranda there in the Lotus building. Next year, we moved into these rooms along the boundary wall. And like that, we were living in very simple conditions. But Prabhupada would tell us, don't mind the difficulties. And then he encouraged us. He said, be strict with yourself. He told us, please don't eat in the restaurants. He said, you are the devotees, you are the Vaishnavas. You put tilak on your face, and you put neck beads around your neck. Like that, you identify yourself as being the devotees, the members of the Krishna consciousness movement. So he said, people know that you are the Vaishnava, so you have no business to go and eat in restaurants. He said, you should simply eat Krishna prasada. Just eat in the temple, you know. Of course, nowadays our movement is a bit different. Those days we were very much based on the ashram. Everyone lived in the temples. After Srila Prabhupada's departure, over the years, the devotees, they have their families, they need their own home. Don't live in the ashram so much now. We still have ashrams. We don't have so many people living in them. Especially here in this country, you don't have people. And in other countries as well, like in the US or in Europe, we don't have a lot of people in the ashrams. Most people are living in their homes. But they're devotees. And Srila Prabhupada also, as a householder, he did not live in an ashram. It was only later in his life, when after he'd taken sannyas and gone to America and began the Krishna consciousness movement. But as a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he did not live in the ashram. He was living as the grihastha. And Srila Prabhupada, of course, had written to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Just a few weeks before the departure of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada wrote to him and said, he said, I am in family life, I'm a grihastha. How can I serve you? He said, you have so many sannyasis here with you. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada had initiated sannyasis, and they were with him, around him. So Prabhupada said, what can I do for you? So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he had recognized our own Srila Prabhupada. He had recognized him, he knew him, and he wrote back to him and told him, he said, oh, you're very good in English. So he said, you can use your English to preach Krishna consciousness. He said, that will be good for you and for those who hear you. So Srila Prabhupada took that instruction seriously. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati left the world, it was 1933, I think.
38, I think, Maharaj. 1st January 1938, I believe.
I thought not that, maybe 36. Maybe he got initiated in 33, and then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati left in 36. Yes, it was the end of the year, end of January, maybe. We always have the disappearance festival in Mayapur. Anyway, he departed from the world. In 1944, our own Srila Prabhupada began back to Godhead. He started different what we call BTG, back to Godhead. But it was just a simple sheet of paper, one sheet of paper, quite big size, and Prabhupada would do everything. He designed the logo, he wrote the articles, he took it to the printers and saw it all typeset. And of course, those days printing was all letterpress. It was very, very different thing from how it is today. It was quite a laborious thing. And Prabhupada would do it, he'd get it printed, then he'd go and try and distribute it. And he would sit, where would he go? Sometimes he would sit in the tea shops. And the owner of the tea shop said, yeah, I remember him. He would always come here, he'd never drink anything. Everyone else would come and drink cups of tea, but he would never take anything. Right? And so Srila Prabhupada, of course, didn't like us to drink tea, because it's, caffeine, you get addicted to it. Tea drinking is a Chinese culture, not Indian. They learned from, the British brought tea drinking from China to India. I was just in Sri Lanka. I saw everywhere they're growing tea there. So much land, is all the hills are all covered with tea bushes to grow tea. So, anyway, at least they make use of the land somehow. And they're famous for their tea, Ceylon tea. But we don't, as devotees, if we want tea, we can drink ginger tea, or jasmine tea, flower tea, but we don't take these teas which are caffeine based, because they're addictive, they're stimulant. You get addicted. Some people, you can't get up in the morning without a cup of tea. And of course, you go on the train in India, every morning you hear chai, chai. And people will look out the blankets and put their hand out to get their cup of chai. Yeah. So, Srila Prabhupada would often sit there in these shops to sell his magazine. And he would ask people even sometimes, please take a subscription. In this way, he would try to do things. Then he printed Srimad. Somebody told him, he said, you're writing magazines. They said, you're writing magazines. Why don't you write a book? Why don't you publish a book? Because magazines are easily thrown away. People won't take care of them. It would be better if you can publish a book. So Srila Prabhupada took the advice seriously, and he began his translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he began to publish it. With no money and no people helping him, it was quite difficult, quite challenging. But somehow he was able to print 3 volumes before he went to the West. Actually, Srimati Morariji, the lady who gave him the passage on the ship to go to America, she had donated for the publishing of 1 volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada had met her, and he had, because she was a devotee of Lord Krishna from the Pushti Marg, and they liked Srimad Bhagavatam, so she helped him to publish Bhagavatam. And then he heard she had a shipping company, so he asked her, please give me a passage on your boat to go to America. And that's how Prabhupada got to America. So then, of course, then it was all struggle, so much struggle he had to go through to begin his Krishna consciousness movement. And when he got to America, then also it was not easy. Early on, he lost his books and typewriter. Oh, I should speak about how Prabhupada cheated his family, right? Because this verse was about cheating. And Prabhupada also said how he cheated his family also. So it happened, Prabhupada was trying to do programs at home, just like today you're having a program at someone's house. And Prabhupada would invite people to come to their home and he would have a program with them. But his wife would not take much interest in the program. She was not very interested. And one time even, his books disappeared. Prabhupada had these Sanskrit books with the commentaries of the Acharyas. If you study Srimad Bhagavatam, you can get the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami and Vallabhacharya, and so they're all in this one big book, big book with the whole Bhagavatam and all the Acharyas' commentaries, everything in Sanskrit. So Prabhupada said at some point my books went missing, and I did not know where they went. But I suspected it could have been my wife, that she sold them to get money to buy biscuits, to drink tea. Right? So Prabhupada took these kind of things as a indication that he should get out from the house. You know, he was living at home with the family, but his business had gone bad. Initially, as a young man, he was successful, and he even had a motor car and everything. But later on, somehow his business declined. And when the business declined, then he saw the family members no longer had the same kind of respect for him. It wasn't the same. And then, although he's trying to do his preaching work, his people were not, the family were not much interested, not supportive. So Prabhupada decided maybe be better to get out from the house. So one day he asked his wife, he said, "What do you want, tea or me?" So she said, "Tea or you? I'd rather have tea." Oh, so Prabhupada said, "Oh, okay." So if that's your thinking, you know, he never said anything directly, but later on, he left home, and he went to live in Vrindavan. And at this point, he's still in white. He's now Vanaprastha, right? Vanaprastha, third stage. So he'd gone out from the house. One of Prabhupada's disciples, there's one man called Mahavishnu Goswami. He's passed away from the world now, but he used to come here. He used to visit Abu Dhabi also. Last night I met a couple of his disciples here in Dubai. And he had also disciples there in Abu Dhabi. Now many of them have gone back to India. They've retired. Mahavishnu Goswami, he was an older man, very scholarly person. He had been a school teacher, and he had become a devotee. And he said something very nice, because he was also in family life, and he had left the family life and become a full-time devotee and become a sannyasi. And he said, it's better that the family say, where did he go, rather than wait till they say, when are you going? Right? If they, because at some point, as you get older,